Hey, Katie. We have The Whispering Statue. We are on Chapter 8, The Race. The three girls were aghast when Dick fell through the open cellar window of Basswood's shop. "What do we do?" George asked. "We'd better run," Bess replied promptly. "Come on." Nancy had stretched out her arms to push the cousins away from the window in case the men looked up. In a moment, however, she inched forward and peered down. If Dick had been hurt, she would certainly go to help him. "But if he's all right," she said to herself, "Bess and George and I had better get away from here as quickly as possible." Dick had landed on a pile of newspapers, evidently used for packing books. When the two men heard the thud, they turned quickly. Dick stood up and looked at them sheepishly. He gave no explanation of his sudden entrance. "He's all right," Nancy thought. "I'm sure he can get out of this predicament himself." She told this to the other girls, and the three scooted away. "Where shall we wait for Dick?" George asked. "I vote for the soda shop," Bess said. Nancy remarked that it was possible when Dick did not see them around, he would figure they had gone back to the yacht club. Then we'd miss a ride home. "I guess you're right," Bess conceded, "but a soda would sure would taste good right now." The girls went directly to the parking lot where Dick had left his car. They climbed in. 10 minutes later, he appeared.
"Hi, I thought I'd find you here."
As he swung himself into the driver's seat, Nancy said, "Tell us what happened. How did you get away from Basswood and Atkin?" The young man grinned.
"Mostly by keeping still. They asked me what I was doing at the window, and I just shrugged. Then they tried to find out what I had overheard. Again, I shrugged. 'Nothing important,' I told them."
As Dick paused, George begged him to go on. "You haven't told us yet how you got away from Mr. Basswood."
"That older man finally said to me, 'I guess you thought we were burglars.' I just laughed, and they took it for granted that he had hit upon the truth. The other man told me to go out the way I had come in. Then they slammed the window shut and locked it."
The three girls laughed, and Dick asked,
"What kind of detective would I make?"
"Excellent," Nancy replied.
"Then maybe that's what I'll take up when I finish college,"
the young man said. As they neared the yacht club, Dick reminded his passengers that the boat races would be held the following day.
"Debbie, I hope you can take the afternoon off."
Nancy said she had to work until 4 o'clock, but that she would come directly back to the yacht club. "Ned can pick me up at the shop." She sighed. "I suppose we girls lost our chance to be in any of the races after smashing up one of your boats."
"I have a surprise for you," Dick said. "Top Job has been repaired and is waiting for you sailors. You can make the last race. Bess and George, you can use it in earlier races. How about it?"
Bess told Dick that she did not plan to enter any of the races, but that George and her friend Bert might take part. "We'll be there early to get in a little practice," George remarked. Nancy regretted that Ned would have no time to try out the sailboat, but she consoled herself with the thought, "Winning isn't everything. We'll have a lot of fun and the competition will be great." When the girls reached their bedroom, Nancy said she thought of a little scheme. Perhaps she could trap Mr. Basswood. "Goodness, what is it?" Bess asked. Nancy said she would call Mrs. Merriam and get the title of a couple of books on astrophysics, which Mr. Basswood was to sell for her. "Then I want Ned to come down to the shop and ask Mr. Basswood if he has the 2 volumes. There might be a clue in his answer." She called Mrs. Merriam, who went to consult her list. She came back to the phone and said there were 2 volumes. System of the World by Sir Isaac Newton and De Orbem Coelestium Revolutionibus, I probably pronounced that horribly wrong, I'm sorry, by Nicholas Copernicus. "But I'm afraid they've been sold," Mrs. Merriam said. "I was to get $10 each as my share." "Thank you," said Nancy, and told the woman what she planned to do. "I hope it works," Mrs. Merriam sighed. Nancy reported what had taken place in the cellar of the shop earlier in the evening, and added,
I'm sure your hunch about Mr. Basswood cheating you is correct."
"I think it's wonderful what you're doing," Mrs. Merriam remarked. "Please keep me posted." "I will." The following morning, Nancy received a phone call to report for work early. When she rang the shop's doorbell, no one came to answer it. She glanced at her watch. It was 5 minutes to 10. For a fleeting second, Nancy wondered if no one was there. On a hunch, she walked around to the back entrance and peered into the basement. It was dark. She returned to the front of the building and rang again. This time, the door was opened by Mr. Atkin. He did not say good morning or make any comment. Nancy greeted him cheerfully and added, "It's a beautiful day, isn't it? A wonderful day for the yacht club races." Mr. Atkin was still silent. At that moment, Mr. Basswood stepped from his office and remarked that Nancy was very prompt. She replied, "Saturday should be a big one for sales in the shop."
"It usually is. Well, suppose you get to work. Find a dust cloth in the rear room and do some cleaning."
Half an hour later, the first customers came in. While Nancy was showing a woman some statuettes, she noticed the front door being opened. Ned Nickerson walked in. He glanced in her direction, but, as planned, gave no sign of recognition. She, in turn, ignored him. He signed the register, then asked for Mr. Basswood. Mr. Atkin looked a bit annoyed, but went to get the shop owner.
"Good morning, sir," Ned said. "I'm interested in astrophysics. I was told to get 2 certain volumes. Since you deal in rare books, I thought you might happen to have copies. They're Newton's System of the World and Copernicus's De Orbis Coelestium Revolutionibus."
Nancy heard Mr. Basswood say,
"I don't have them here, but I can get them for you."
He looked Ned up and down as if appraising him as a purchaser of expensive books.
"Great,"
Ned said.
"How much would they be?" $28 apiece, and a bargain at that."
Both Nancy and Ned blinked at this. According to Mrs. Merriam's statement, Mr. Basswood had told her that she would get $10 apiece. She should receive 21 for each. Nancy was afraid that Ned would say the price was too high and not order the books. She wanted Mrs. Merriam to examine them to see if they had come from her collection. Ned must buy them. Quickly, the young detective sidled over to Mr. Basswood.
Ned was saying, "Well, I don't know. That's a lot of money for me to shell out."
Very gently, Nancy stepped on one of Ned's toes and hoped he would get the message that he was to pay any price the shop owner asked.
"Are the volumes in good condition?"
Ned asked.
"Oh, yes,"
Mr. Basswood replied.
"Then I'll take the books," Ned said. "I'm staying at the yacht club. Please deliver them there when you get them. The money will be waiting at the desk."
Ned glanced around the shop and remarked that the objects for sale were certainly attractive.
"But I can't spend any more today." He laughed. "I'm broke after buying those books."
He said goodbye to Mr. Basswood and left. Nancy realized she had to give some excuse for having walked up to Mr. Basswood. She said sweetly, "My customer can't seem to make up her mind between 2 of the statuettes. Perhaps you can point out some things about them I don't know." Mr. Basswood talked to the woman. He finally helped her make up her mind, but she said, "This was the one the young lady was recommending all along." The shop owner made no comment and walked off. Nancy worked hard during the day, but promptly at 4 o'clock she said goodbye to Mr. Basswood and his assistant and hurried away. As prearranged, Ned met her at the town parking lot, and they hurried to the yacht club in his car. "Thanks, Ned, for buying the books. If the ones you receive are from Mrs. Merriam's collection, Mr. Basswood is making a tremendous profit instead of only his commission."
"Wow!"
Nancy dashed into the yacht club to change her clothes and met Ned at the dock. A race was in progress. Bess and Dave stood there. They said hello to Nancy, and Dave added, "George and Bert are on that leading boat." Nancy felt a thrill of excitement. Their craft was tacking in barely ahead of a red one. Bess began to jump up and down and scream, "George! Bert! Come in! Hurry! Come in!" Nancy, Ned, and Dave took up the cry, but suddenly their hearts sank. The rival sailboat was pulling ahead. It had caught a freshening breeze at exactly the right angle. The next second, Bert took advantage of the same strong wind and tacked swiftly to starboard. George worked the tiller in perfect harmony, and once more the sailfish shot ahead.
"Come in! Beat 'em!" cried Dave.
The race was a photo finish, but George and Bert were declared the winners. "You were superb!" Bess exclaimed. They were congratulated from all sides. Then the chairman announced that they were ready for the final race. The contestants scurried to their craft, eager and hopeful. Nancy was to be at the tiller. As Nancy and Ned took their positions, a boy came running. He called out to the watching crowd, "Telegram for Miss Nancy Drew!" Instinctively, Nancy started to rise, but Ned pulled her back and hissed into her ear, "Sit still, Debbie Lynbrook."
Uh-oh. She almost jumped up there and revealed herself.
We'll have to see what happens with their race.